Do you have a love-hate relationship with Service Titan? What's up, blue collar business owner? Welcome back to the Blue Collar Prosperity Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Masca, where we focus on helping guide you to have a prosperous blue collar business. Today, we have with us Steve Cassette. Steve is with Titan Wizards, and he is a technology expert with over 10 years of experience with knowledge in integrations, price book, inventory, and all those confusing inner workings within Service Titan. Steve Cassette, that is him in one sentence. Welcome, Steve. Thanks so much for being here. What's going on today?
But it's doing good. I'm living the dream, and yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, excited to have you here. As a former user of Service Titan, and most of our clients use Service Titan. Looking forward to this conversation because I know it is always a hot topic amongst pretty much everybody in the home service world. That it's a thing we need, but it's sometimes really hard and frustrating, confusing to use. So let's jump into this. How did you become a Service Titan expert?
So the company I worked for previously, which was called Nice Seating and Air, we used to use ESC, which is I don't know if anyone is used to it, but it's basically a self-hosted dispatching software. We kept having lags and issues, and we essentially outgrown the platform. So our boss looked at the Service Titan, which even back in 2016 was really starting to make waves in the industry. And we decided to migrate over to it. And straight from the get-go, and a lot of people that implemented into Service Titan are probably going to be able to kind of relate to it, is that they had issues with importing the data. Things were in the wrong place. And I had very intimate knowledge of the internal SQL database of ESC. So I could tell them, look, put that there, put that there. So we were able to have as little disruptions as we could. We had some, of course, you always do. But that's how I started with the platform. And then I just kept involving myself more and more into it and learning more, and that's pretty much the base.
So you've been using Service Titan since 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just kind of dive into it. You had mentioned, most people are migrating from something to Service Titan. They don't just start a home service business and go into Service Titan right away. They're going to use something else, whatever that platform might be, another CRM. Sometimes people just use QuickBooks. Sometimes they got spreadsheets, but then they kind of put the big boy pants on and say, hey, we got to go to Service Titan because all the capabilities and all the things it has. What are some of the biggest issues you see? Like you said, sometimes it's the data, but what are some of the biggest issues you see that home service businesses run into when they make that initial migration?
It very much varies from company to company and source software to source software. Like very often, I see them having, for example, the first name, last name swapped on their database, or that's why they have a feature gate for that now. But they also very often have, for example, the membership came in wrong, or the credit card numbers didn't come in, or it can vary from A to Z, honestly, from company to company. The onboarding experience in Service Titan, and that's something I've noticed since I've been with Titan Wizards. You can have one of two things: either the enterprise onboarding or the business onboarding. The business onboarding is usually very solid. They guide you from A to Z, and it's really awesome. The business onboarding can be hit or miss. So yeah, that's my experience with it. Then I keep hearing people, even before I was with Titan Wizards, we onboarded with Service Titan and it was a complete train wreck, for example. It's very hit or miss.
So I think before we get into the kind of the inner workings and some of the tips and tactics you're going to bring, I want to kind of hit on that a little bit for the people that might not be on Service Titan. So they're listening to this, they're using a different CRM. What are some kind of, tips you have for them and kind of benchmarks maybe you have for those users of non-Service Titan users that are using something else, of when is it the right time to make the switch to the Service Titan platform?
That's a good question. I would say the best way to do this is look at the way you use a platform right now and how many workarounds you do to try to make your day-to-day business work. And how many times do you tell yourself, well, okay, the platform cannot do that, so we're just not going to do it yet. We're just going to kind of delay it down the line. If you keep telling yourself that, then it might start to be time to, or if things are too slow, or if you keep trying to make excuses for the platform, it might be time to look at a bigger one. And again, we're talking about Service Titan here. There might be others that would probably strike your fancy, but in general, I would say that's going to be the general rule of thumb here.
That's great advice. when they're looking at a platform like Service Titan, along with, hey, we've got all these workarounds, what do they need to do to prepare for that migration? Because like you said, I feel a lot of times we talk to people, it's like, oh, we switched to Service Titan, it was too early or it's too late, or the support was terrible. What are some things that they should have in place or prepared before they, pull the plug and go all in on it?
So Service Titan is a huge platform that has a lot of modules, a lot of which you cannot see right from the get-go. That, how can I try to explain this, is monumentally huge, meaning that you have a lot of options, a lot of ways of doing things. If you're thinking of switching to Service Titan, I would look at your company overall. How many of them are hungry for technology? How many of them are willing to learn? If none of them are willing to learn and you're switching them to a new platform, they will most likely not going to be on board, and you're going to have to fight tooth and nail to make them learn it and all that stuff. That's maybe like prepare your team for the change. In other words, like showing them how the things that ServiceLine can do, showing them how it would make their job easier, showing them what would get improved. Do get them ready for possible issues, friction on onboarding, because, of course, there's going to be issues on, getting, to learn the platform, but get them excited on the platform so that they are more willing to learn once they are on the platform, I would say would be the best start.
That's great advice. So now let's kind of make the transition that, okay, now we're using Service Titan. All our listeners here are using Service Titan. And some of the biggest headaches I see people run into, I want to kind of get your feedback on this. First one is price book. I feel at some point in users' company's journey, they are battling the price book. Let's dive into that. What do we need to know about the price book? In Service Titan.
The price book in ServiceLine is essentially the skeleton of your company. It is where everything is started. It is linked to accounting. It is linked to inventory if you're going there. It is linked to your job day to day. It is linked to your estimate. It is the base, it is the foundation of your Service Titan. So you need to have, you probably will not have a good price book right off the get-go, which is in those occasions that you might want to use things like Pricebook Pro, which might actually be a legitimate start. The only thing that you always have to say is that those price books also have to have cost in them. Again, maybe not at the very start, but over time, you're going to want to have cost in them that, right, as accurate costing in your task as possible, so that you can, as a business owner, you can make better guided decisions on, like, for example, okay, what are my margins? Are margins too thin? Do I need to increase cost? Do I need to increase my hourly? Markup or anything like that. Like a way for you to manage your company more effectively, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I really like the thought that you kind of just got to get started with it. It's not going to be perfect at first, because I do talk to a lot of people who are like, we haven't used it yet. We're still kind of working on it. In my opinion, we don't really know what's going to break or what we need to do until we actually start implementing. Like you said, we might not have costs in the right away. It might not be linked to inventory right away, but at least let's get it going, and then we can continue to improve it. A couple of things that you mentioned that I want to kind of hit on next is linking it to inventory. I know this is I think a desire for many owners, and very few can implement it properly. What are some of the things we need to know about tracking inventory, tracking it properly, replenishment, and all the things that go with, making that as efficient as possible?
Okay, so the big bare bones is, of course, to have the materials and equipments in your book. That is the very much bare bones, because if you don't have it there, you can't track it. Once that's there, you would need to have. It is a very high recommendation that you link them to the services that they're related. Now, I'll give an example here. Would be, let's say, for example, replace capacitors. There is many types of capacitors. So I would say, for example, at least add the average amount of materials that you're going to be using. Another example here would be, let's say you're going to have an install package for full AC furnace and coil. You're going to use pipes. You're going to use wiring. You're going to use bolts. You're going to use add that to the task, at least an average amount bill of materials, so that you can make a good pricing. And then after that, also, once you add those tasks in your estimate, it's going to bring in all the materials, and then you'll be able to make requisitions from there. Meaning that the whole purchasing process, instead of adding each material one by one to each PO, going to each vendor, it's just going to be a lot more streamlined, a lot simpler.
And then tying that to accounting, do you recommend, or how do you recommend kind of tracking this on the accounting side? Do we link inventory to QuickBooks? Do we not link inventory to QuickBooks? Um, do you have each vehicle as, a separate warehouse? How do y'all normal? I mean, obviously it's case by case. You guys do kind of,
Yes.
every client's different, but on a big picture thing, what's the sequence look like there?
So inventory, most people either link to QBD or QuickBooks Desktop or QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online does not have a good inventory tracking capability. It's actually, I believe it works with one single warehouse, which doesn't work if you have trucks. But to be fair, the Service Titan's inventory tracking capabilities are pretty solid, as long as you follow it. And we're going to talk a bit about a third party here, but I've actually got a demo about a platform called Ply, which is a nice little third party platform for inventory tracking. But I would say using that has a bit of a downside, that you lose the guardrailed experience of Service Titan. Because in Service Titan, sorry, I went a bit of on a tangent here,
Keep going.
but in Service Titan, if you try to add to an invoice an item that is not in stock, it's going to block you unless you have negative inventory enabled. It's going to say you don't have any stock for that. So then that forces you to go track it before you can go on with your invoice. If you use a third party like Ply, there's a lot more options for additional workflows, a lot more way for you to keep going on even if your inventory is inaccurate. That would be a downside for a lot of companies, because I know, for example, in mine, the warehouse manager essentially just did whatever. If it's something that was not in stock, he would adjust the inventory. But to go more on your original question about QuickBooks Desktop tracks inventory a little bit differently from Service Titan, which if you have inventory enabled in Service Titan, very often you're going to export and get like an inventory on stock error in QuickBooks, and it's because you did not export things in the right order, and it's complicated. So I would say for those that are thinking of going to inventory in Service Titan, I would say turn it off in QuickBooks, but that's just my suggestion. If you want to have both, that's fine. As long as you export things in order, you should be fine. Though I sometimes had to do some adjustments in QuickBooks to get things in, but yeah, essentially, and again, I'm coming from a tech background. Very often, if you have two inventory tracking systems behind each other, you often get the same kind of problem as if you have two antiviruses on your computer. They kind of mess with each other, so it kind of causes issues. But that's my personal suggestion.
Gotcha. No, that's good insight. Definitely helpful for all the listeners out there. Let's kind of go back to QuickBooks. Obviously, me doing CFO work, we work with a lot of clients who have Service Titan. There's always the question, is it linked to QuickBooks? Is it not? From an accounting standpoint, are we pushing invoices and payments? Are we matching all the things? What are some best practices around getting the accounting set up properly so that it's Service Titan's fully integrated with QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop?
There's more than one way to skin that specific cat. Again, I'm gonna split that question into two answers, which would be QuickBooks Desktop and Online. On desktop, you can export as much or as little as you'd like. The best practices, of course, is to export everything, because then that gets you as accurate data as you can. Like you can export invoices, bills, POs. You won't export POs, you're going to export bills, because that's what you export to QuickBooks. But payments and everything like that, you can export all of that. But for some companies, that won't be possible. In ServiceTitan, there's the options, like I said, like every single entity type, which that's what I call, for example, invoices, payments, whatever. You can export as little or as much as possible, automatically or manually. Especially on the QuickBooks Online standpoint side of things, you can use something like touchless journal entries, which Essentially, that is I call it the autopilot. You basically turn it on and it does everything on its own. It just exports everything. You don't need to worry about anything. The only thing is that it's journal entries, meaning you don't have, like, for example, customer names. You don't have invoice numbers. It's just the money that moves over to QuickBooks. That is, honestly, in my opinion, the touchless journal entries is the best thing. It's like candy. It's just so easy to manage as long as you trust the numbers that are coming over to QuickBooks. To be fair, if they are not right, you can just update the numbers in Service Titan and they would go over to QuickBooks. So, but some accountants don't like that. There's very often reasons why they don't want to do that, and I respect that. So, I believe right now ServiceTitan is trying to push the best practice to be touchless journal entries, but they also very much understand that from company to company, the requirements are going to be different. That's why they're keeping document-based exports, which is what they call the old, like,
Send
customers'
over each
invoices and stuff.
invoice and all that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So yeah, I mean, I think it's good to know because I feel a lot of times people get hung up on that, so they just don't do anything, and then they're not talking at all, and it's a lot harder for the business owner, the CFO, the bookkeeper, the accountant to really have all the data in one place. So you had mentioned Ply. I want to kind of get back to that conversation now as we transition into more like third-party integrations, APIs. What are some of the best things that our listeners might not know that they can integrate, that they can plug into ServiceTitan to help them run their business? What are some of your favorites, Steve?
That's a loaded question because if you want to know what you can do with the API, I think the answer is just yes. Basically, all of it, as long depending on how much pain you want to put yourself into. So, but the TLDR about general integrations that I've worked with over the years that are very good is, for example, those that use JB warranties. There is an integration that allows them to automatically automate the purchasing of warranties and the processing of warranty jobs, which is, I mean, as long as you have to adapt your workflow to how their integration works. But once that's done, that works well. I've also seen, for example, we had an integration with iPermit, which is a company that processes local county slash country permits for your HVAC jobs and stuff like that. That essentially you would add a tag to the job, and about 15-20 minutes later, you would see it on their portal. All you have to do is enter some specific information. Everything is just going to go through. Um, Again, there's Zapier, which is the kind of penultimate integration that you can do with anything. And Zapier, we've done a lot of things over the years. I've coded my own share of custom automations also, like quite literally in C sharp, like in coding, like keyboard, like to go over to Google Chat, to Microsoft Teams, to Slack. It's, again, the API at the beginning was very like bare bones. It didn't have a whole lot of things. Now it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the possibilities are endless.
Super cool. No, that's good. That's good to know. And I think for anybody out there that pulls a lot of permits, checking out what Steve mentioned with iPermits, if you can kind of automate that and sync it up and take out some of the manual work, that's good to know. So last ServiceTitan topic as we start to wrap up this conversation is marketing. ServiceTitan has a lot of different marketing features, functionalities, Marketing Pro, tracking. They got all the things. But if I had to guess, most people aren't using the things. And if they are, maybe they're not using to the full capability or getting the most out of it. What's your take on the marketing side of ServiceTitan?
The marketing side of Service Titan, I love it. I love how they have, the biggest draw from Marketing Pro, and I'm going to talk about Marketing Pro because you cannot talk about marketing in Service Titan without going to Marketing Pro. The positive about Marketing Pro is that you have access to a lot of your data right there handily in Marketing Pro. My biggest gripe, and again, this might be a power user thing, is that you cannot access all of your data from it. And I said that even in Pantheon. I went to the Marketing Pro booth and I said, my biggest gripe about Marketing Pro is very often you need to have access to a piece of data that is available in reporting, but is not available in Marketing Pro. I wish you could have access to all of it, but I understand back-end requirements, development fees, edit costs, and whatever. But yes, but in Service Titan, the marketing works really well as long as you have everything tied in properly. I see a lot of tenants, again, from working with the company I work now, that how can I explain this? Use a agency that they use workarounds to get their data, like for example, the lead data coming from the website and things like that over the service titan from the API. And sometimes the numbers don't match. And business owners are like, those numbers don't make sense. They're trying to make sense out of it all. And the marketing platform maybe doesn't help them as much as they should, or there's confusion between the two, if that makes sense. Like in other words, service titan has a way to integrate with their platform for marketing. And usually, those marketing firms will use kind of their own little platform, but they're going to be like, yeah, the user wants to have the data in service titan, so we'll use kind of a way to make it work. But the business owner doesn't understand how things flow or how to double check that everything is accurate. That's the biggest worry here. And I understand that marketing is a big beast, that they don't want to do it in-house. But I wish marketing platforms were a little bit more cognizant of that, so that they could spend more time in making the business owners more at ease with how the data flows in for their marketing, and being able to make more better decisions about, again, their spends and all that stuff.
So you're a big Marketing Pro fan then. Marketing Pro's the way to go.
Marketing Pro. So I'm going to be completely honest. Back at NICE, we actually use Marketing Pro and we use Go High Level. We set up custom workflows to push information for Service Titan to Go High Level, because Marketing Pro did not allow us enough data, enough access to the data that we needed. Like a good example here, and that might have changed by now, mind you, but is that we had ongoing memberships, which for those that know Service Titan know that the ongoing memberships, you have a next bill date. Back then, again, that might have changed now, that next bill date is a variable, a parameter that was not available in Marketing Pro. You had only the from and the to, which is only useful for fixed membership, or like a fixed time memberships. So I was like, okay, how are we going to do this? Then we just go ahead and push it to Go High Level and do our marketing that way. So we had two marketing platforms working side by side. So again, it very much depends. Like in most cases, Marketing Pro is going to do well, and I think they've started improving that way. But it is that yeah, just I would say keep that in mind.
So what do y'all do at Titan Wizards? What's kind of the main things you guys focus on? Who's your ideal customer? What are the biggest problems you're seeing out there? What are you guys great at?
So Titan Wizards is a company. It's a contracting company. We're certified providers for Service Titan that help companies make the most out of Service Titan. Now, that's a bit of a large scope of work. Basically, some companies come to us with a specific problem that we fix, and then we're on our way. Some of them are sometimes like, willing to say, for example, is there other ways that we can improve our Service Titan? So we go look at their platforms, see how things could be improved, and we go ahead and do that. And it's a more, a lengthier term of work. We also have sometimes companies that are onboarding on Service Titan, and they just want us to be there to be their advocate, like their helpers, and trying to get as much things done in Service Titan on onboarding as possible. It kind of go, and we also have some customers that essentially just hire us as a secondary way of getting support. Honestly, it's anything that touches Service Titan, will go ahead and just do it for you.
Steve, 24 hours in the next 24 hours, what's one thing our listeners can do to take immediate action to, let's assume they're Service Titan users. What's one thing they can do within the next 24 hours to make their Service Titan work a little bit better for them?
I would say add materials to your Pressbook tasks. Make sure that you have your costing accurate. If you go in your reports and you see that your invoice, your job margins are 100%, do not pat yourself on the back. It's most likely inaccurate. So it is what it is. If you have no cost in your jobs, I would say get that dialed in, get that fixed.
There you guys go. Get your cost in there, get your materials in there, get the labor rate in there, all the things, so you know exactly how much money you're making on every job, every hour you guys work. Steve Cassette, thanks again for coming to the show, sharing your journey, and providing a bunch of great actionable advice and insight and wisdom for all the blue-collar business owners out there as we continue on this journey to prosperity. But before we sign off, Steve, where can our listeners go to learn more about Titan Wizards?
It's on the website, titanwizards.com. And you'll see it's going to be a very easy to spot. It's going to be a website with a lot of yellow.
There you go. And if you guys go to any shows, you'll probably see them with their yellow shirts, black backpack, yellow logo on the backpack. They are hard to miss, and they're great people over at Titan Wizards. Steve, thanks again for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.